The morning sun cast long shadows across the naval base as Lieutenant Sarah Ghost Matthews walked through the compound with measured steps. Her boots made no sound on the concrete, a habit ingrained from years of operations where silence meant the difference between life and death. At 28, she had already earned a reputation that preceded her wherever she went in military circles. Sarah's journey to this moment began in a small farming town in Montana, where she learned to hunt alongside her grandfather before she could properly tie her shoes. The old man, a Korean War veteran, taught her that patience and precision were worth more than all the ammunition in the world. "One shot, one kill," he would whisper as they crouched in the early morning cold, waiting for the perfect moment. When Sarah enlisted in the Army at 18, she quickly distinguished herself during basic training. Her drill sergeants noticed something different about the quiet girl from Montana. While other recruits struggled with marksmanship, Sarah consistently hit targets at distances that made seasoned soldiers take notice. Her scores were so exceptional that within months, she was recommended for specialized training. The path to becoming a sniper was not easy for anyone, but, for a woman in the early 2010s, it was nearly impossible. Sarah faced skepticism, harassment, and outright hostility from some of her male counterparts. During one particularly brutal training exercise in the desert, she spent 3 days in position without moving, waiting for her target to appear. When it finally did, her shot was so precise that the instructor checking the target had to use a magnifying glass to confirm the hit. "How did you do that?" asked Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, a grizzled veteran who had initially doubted her abilities. Sarah simply shrugged. "Grandpa always said the rifle doesn't know if you're a man or woman. It only knows if you can shoot." Her first deployment came sooner than expected. The unit needed a sniper for a mission in Afghanistan, and, despite having less time in service than others, Sarah's test scores and training performance made her the obvious choice. The briefing was straightforward: a high-value target had been identified in a Taliban stronghold, and conventional assault would result in too many casualties. The mission took place in the mountains of Helmand Province. Sarah and her spotter, Corporal Mike Chen, hiked for 2 days through treacherous terrain to reach their position. They dug in on a ridge nearly 800 meters from the target building, camouflaging themselves so well that they became part of the landscape itself. For 18 hours, they waited. The temperature swung from scorching heat during the day to near freezing at night. Sarah's body ached from maintaining the same position, but she never moved except to adjust her breathing. Chen watched in amazement as she seemed to enter an almost meditative state, her breathing so controlled and quiet that he sometimes had to look twice to make sure she was still there. When the target finally appeared, walking confidently across an open courtyard, Sarah had less than 5 seconds to take the shot. Wind conditions were challenging, and the distance was at the very edge of her rifle's effective range. She exhaled slowly, felt her heartbeat steady, and squeezed the trigger with the same gentle pressure she had learned hunting deer with her grandfather. The sound of the shot echoed across the valley for what seemed like minutes. Through her scope, Sarah watched as the target dropped instantly. The mission was complete, but this was just the beginning of her legend. Word of the successful mission spread quickly through military channels. A female soldier had eliminated a high-value target from an impossible distance under extreme conditions. Some praised her skill, while others questioned the reports. Sarah herself said nothing about it, following her grandfather's advice: let your actions speak. Words are just noise. Her second deployment brought more opportunities to prove herself. This time, she was assigned to a forward operating base where sniper support was desperately needed. The Taliban had been using the mountainous terrain to launch surprise attacks on coalition forces, and conventional responses were proving ineffective. Sarah's commanding officer, Major Williams, was initially skeptical about having a female sniper in such a dangerous area. "This isn't training, Matthews," he told her during their first meeting. "Out there, people are trying to kill you for real." "Sir, people have been trying to kill me since my first deployment," Sarah replied calmly. "The only difference is now I have more experience staying alive." Her first week at the FOB was relatively quiet, giving her time to study the terrain and identify potential threats. She spent hours observing enemy movement patterns, noting how they used the landscape to their advantage. Other soldiers began to notice her methodical approach to everything she did.
Sergeant First Class Jackson, a veteran of multiple deployments, found himself impressed despite his initial reservations.
"Most snipers I've worked with are either cocky or paranoid," he told his squad.
"This one's just focused. Like she's always thinking 3 moves ahead."
The first test of her abilities came on a Tuesday morning when Taliban fighters launched a coordinated attack on a convoy returning to base. The convoy was pinned down in a valley with no escape route, taking fire from multiple positions in the surrounding hills. Sarah received the call for support while she was cleaning her rifle in the armory. Without hesitation, she grabbed her gear and headed for the designated overwatch position. The climb to the ridge took 20 minutes of hard running while carrying 60 pounds of equipment. By the time she reached her position, she was breathing hard but her hands remained steady. Through her scope, she could see muzzle flashes from at least 6 different enemy positions. The convoy below was taking heavy fire, and several vehicles were already damaged. She needed to eliminate the threats quickly and precisely to give the convoy a chance to escape. Her first shot came from nearly 900 meters away, targeting an enemy machine gunner who was causing the most damage to the convoy. The bullet found its mark instantly, silencing the gun.
Within the next 4 minutes, Sarah eliminated 5 more targets with the same methodical precision she had learned as a child. The Taliban fighters, realizing they were being picked off by an unseen sniper, began to retreat. The convoy was able to extract safely with no coalition casualties. When Sarah returned to base, word of her performance had already spread throughout the compound. 6 confirmed kills in 4 minutes, Major Williams told her as she reported back to his office.
"I've never seen anything like it."
Sarah simply nodded. "The convoy needed support, sir. I provided it."
This incident marked the beginning of a pattern. Over the next several months, Sarah was called upon again and again to provide overwatch for dangerous missions. Each time, she performed with the same calm efficiency that was becoming her trademark.
Enemy fighters began to fear the presence of an invisible sniper who could strike from impossible distances.
During one particularly challenging mission, Sarah and her team were tasked with providing support for a night raid on a Taliban compound. Intelligence indicated that several high-value targets would be present, but the compound was heavily fortified and surrounded by civilians. Sarah spent 2 days studying satellite imagery and reconnaissance photos of the target area. She identified 17 different positions from which she could provide effective overwatch while minimizing risk to civilians.
Her attention to detail impressed even the most experienced special operations soldiers involved in the planning.
The night of the mission, Sarah took position on a rooftop nearly half a mile from the target compound. As the assault team moved into position, she watched through her night vision scope, tracking the movement of both friendly and enemy forces. Her role was to eliminate any threats that might endanger the assault team while ensuring no civilians were harmed. When the assault began, chaos erupted in the compound. Enemy fighters emerged from hidden positions, trying to flank the assault team. Sarah's rifle spoke 3 times in quick succession, each shot eliminating a threat before it could engage friendly forces. Her precision was so exact that the assault team was able to complete their mission without firing a single shot themselves. "Guardian Angel, this is Alpha Team," came the voice through her radio. "Don't know how you do it, but we're all going home tonight because of you." Sarah keyed her radio briefly.
"Just doing my job, Alpha Team. Glad everyone's safe."
By the end of her second deployment, Sarah had accumulated an impressive record of successful missions. Her confirmed kill count was climbing steadily, but she never spoke about it openly. When asked by curious soldiers about her success rate, she would simply say that she focused on protecting her fellow service members. The reputation she was building caught the attention of higher command levels. Special operations units began requesting her specifically for their most dangerous missions. Each assignment seemed more challenging than the last, but Sarah approached them all with the same calm determination. During one mission that would become legendary among those who witnessed it, Sarah was tasked with eliminating a sniper who had been terrorizing coalition forces for weeks. The enemy marksman was skilled and cautious, never staying in one position long enough to be tracked down. Several attempts had been made to locate and neutralize him, but he had managed to evade capture while continuing to inflict casualties. Sarah studied every available piece of intelligence about the enemy sniper. She analyzed his previous attacks, looking for patterns in his behavior and preferred shooting positions. After 3 days of careful observation, she identified a location where she believed he would eventually appear. The waiting game lasted 5 days. Sarah remained in position, barely moving, eating only when necessary and sleeping in short intervals. On the 5th day, her patience was rewarded when the enemy sniper appeared exactly where she had predicted he would. The shot was one of the most challenging she had ever attempted. The distance was over 1,200 meters, and wind conditions were constantly changing. She waited for nearly an hour, observing wind patterns and calculating the exact moment when conditions would be optimal. When she finally took the shot, it was perfect. The enemy sniper was eliminated instantly, ending his reign of terror. Coalition forces in the area breathed easier knowing that particular threat had been neutralized. Word of this achievement spread rapidly through military channels, reaching levels of command that typically didn't concern themselves with individual soldiers. Sarah's name began appearing in classified reports that crossed the desks of generals and intelligence officials. But, even as her reputation grew, Sarah remained the same quiet, focused professional she had always been. She continued to approach each mission with meticulous preparation and flawless execution. Her fellow soldiers began to view her with a mixture of respect and awe, knowing that having her on their side significantly increased their chances of surviving whatever challenges lay ahead. The transformation from a farm girl from Montana to one of the military's most effective snipers was complete, but Sarah's journey was far from over. Each mission brought new challenges and opportunities to prove that skill and determination mattered more than gender or background. She had earned her place among the elite, and there was no turning back. The secure briefing room at Joint Special Operations Command was filled with tension as Sarah entered for what she believed would be another routine mission assignment. The officers present represented multiple branches of the military, and their serious expressions suggested this was anything but routine. Colonel Harrison, a man whose reputation for demanding excellence was legendary, gestured for her to take a seat at the conference table. Lieutenant Matthews, he began, his voice carrying the weight of authority earned through decades of service. Your performance record has reached the highest levels of command. We have a proposition for you. Sarah listened carefully as the colonel explained that she was being offered the opportunity to cross-train with Naval Special Warfare units. The Navy SEALs had expressed interest in incorporating her unique skill set into their operations, particularly for missions requiring precise long-range elimination of targets in maritime and coastal environments. The offer was both an honor and a challenge. The SEALs were known for their demanding standards and tight-knit brotherhood. Very few outsiders were ever invited to train with them, and certainly no women had ever been given such an opportunity. Sarah understood that she would be under intense scrutiny from the moment she arrived at their training facility. Sir, she responded after a moment of consideration, I accept the assignment. When do I report? 3 weeks later, Sarah found herself at the Naval Special Warfare Training Compound in Coronado, California. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly to the horizon, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore provided a constant backdrop to the intense training activities taking place throughout the facility. Commander Roberts, the officer in charge of her integration training, was blunt in his initial assessment. Matthews, I'm going to be honest with you. Half the men here think this is a publicity stunt. The other half think you're going to get someone killed. You're going to have to prove yourself every single day. Sarah nodded, understanding the challenge she faced. I wouldn't expect anything less, sir. I'm here to contribute to the mission, not to make political statements. Her first week involved intensive physical conditioning designed to test whether she could keep up with the demanding pace of SEAL operations. The training was brutal, designed to push even the most elite soldiers to their limits. Sarah approached each challenge with the same methodical determination she brought to every aspect of her military career. The obstacle courses were unlike anything she had experienced in Army training. They required not just strength and endurance, but also problem-solving skills and the ability to function effectively while exhausted. Some of the SEAL candidates she trained alongside were clearly testing her, increasing the pace or making subtle attempts to exclude her from team activities. Petty Officer Williams, a veteran of multiple deployments, was particularly skeptical. During one especially challenging exercise involving underwater navigation, he made several comments clearly intended to rattle her confidence. "Hope you can hold your breath better than you can handle the pressure, Army," he muttered as they prepared for the dive.
Sarah's response was to simply focus on the task at hand.
When the exercise was complete, she had posted one of the fastest times of the day while maintaining perfect navigation accuracy. Williams said nothing, but his expression suggested he was beginning to reassess his initial judgment.
The marksmanship training presented unique challenges that pushed Sarah's skills in new directions. SEAL operations often required shooting from unstable platforms, in adverse weather conditions, and while wearing full diving gear. The instructors seemed determined to find her breaking point, creating scenarios that would challenge even the most experienced marksman. During one exercise, Sarah was required to engage targets from a small boat being tossed around by heavy swells. The platform was unstable, salt spray was affecting visibility, and the targets were moving. Most shooters struggled to maintain accuracy under these conditions, but Sarah adapted quickly, using techniques she had learned hunting in Montana winters to compensate for the challenging environment. Chief Petty Officer Martinez, the senior marksmanship instructor, observed her performance with growing interest. "Where did you learn to adjust for platform movement like that?" he asked after she had successfully engaged all targets despite the difficult conditions. "Hunting from tree stands in high wind," Sarah replied simply. "Same principles, different environment." Martinez nodded approvingly. "Most people take weeks to learn what you just figured out in an hour. That's special operations thinking."
As her training progressed, Sarah began to notice a gradual shift in attitude among some of the SEALs. Her consistent performance and professional demeanor were earning respect from those willing to judge her based on ability rather than prejudice. However, a significant portion of the unit remained skeptical, watching for any sign of weakness or failure. The breakthrough moment came during a complex training scenario that combined multiple skills. The exercise involved infiltrating a mock enemy compound, eliminating specific targets, and extracting without detection. Sarah was assigned as the designated marksman for a six-man team, responsible for providing overwatch and precision fire support. The mission began before dawn, with the team approaching the target by water. Sarah had to maintain her equipment's readiness while swimming through cold ocean water, then quickly establish a firing position on rocky terrain overlooking the compound. The challenges were significant, but her training had prepared her for exactly this type of operation.
As the assault team moved into position, Sarah identified 3 enemy sentries who posed threats to the mission's success.
Her first target was nearly 400 meters away, positioned on a guard tower with a clear view of the team's approach route. The shot had to be taken quickly and silently to avoid alerting other defenders.
Sarah's rifle coughed quietly through its suppressor, and the first sentry dropped instantly.
Within seconds, she had identified and engaged the second target, eliminating the threat before he could raise an alarm. The third target was partially concealed behind cover, presenting only a small portion of his silhouette as a viable aiming point. The shot required exceptional precision, as any miscalculation could result in a wounded enemy who might still be able to alert others. Sarah took extra time to ensure perfect sight alignment and trigger control. When she fired, the target was eliminated cleanly, allowing the assault team to complete their mission without opposition. "Outstanding work, Ghost," came the voice of team leader Chief Kowalski through her earpiece.
"That's the best overwatch I've ever seen." When the team returned to base for debriefing, word of Sarah's performance spread quickly through the SEAL community. The precision and speed with which she had eliminated 3 targets in rapid succession impressed even the most skeptical observers. Her ability to perform under pressure while supporting a team was exactly what special operations units valued most. Petty Officer Williams, who had initially questioned her presence, approached her after the debrief. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly.
"I've been doing this for 8 years, and I've never seen shooting like that."
"You saved our mission today."
Sarah accepted his apology gracefully, understanding that earning respect in this environment required proving herself repeatedly.
"We're all on the same team," she replied. "I'm just glad everyone went home safe."
The next phase of her training involved learning specialized SEAL tactics and procedures. This included advanced diving techniques, maritime insertion methods, and close-quarters battle skills. Each new area of study presented unique challenges, but Sarah approached them with the same systematic dedication she brought to everything else. The diving training was particularly demanding. SEALs often operated in conditions where visibility was near zero and equipment failures could be fatal. Sarah had to learn to trust her training and maintain focus even when disoriented or under extreme stress. The instructors pushed her hard, creating emergency scenarios designed to test her ability to problem-solve while underwater. During one exercise, her primary air supply was deliberately disabled while she was 40 feet below the surface. She had to locate and activate her backup system while navigating to a specific target point. The exercise was designed to simulate equipment failure during a combat mission, where panic could result in death or mission failure. Sarah's response was textbook perfect. She immediately switched to emergency procedures, conserved air while completing the navigation requirements, and surfaced exactly where planned. Her instructor, gunner's mate Stevens, had expected some level of panic or confusion. Instead, he witnessed the kind of calm professionalism that characterized the best special operations personnel. "Most people fight the water when things go wrong," Stevens observed during the debrief. "You work with it. That's the difference between someone who survives and someone who doesn't." The close-quarters battle training challenged Sarah in different ways. While her long-range precision was unquestioned, fighting in confined spaces required different skills and mindset. The techniques emphasized speed, aggression, and split-second decision-making rather than the patience and precision that characterized sniper work. Initially, Sarah struggled with some aspects of this training. Her natural inclination was to take time to assess situations carefully, but CQB demanded immediate action based on limited information. The instructors worked with her to develop these skills while recognizing that her primary value to the teams would always be as a precision marksman. Lieutenant Commander Phillips, who oversaw the advanced training programs, noted her progress in his evaluation reports. "Matthews has demonstrated exceptional adaptability and professional growth. While her greatest strength remains long-range precision shooting, she has successfully integrated basic special operations skills that make her a valuable team member rather than a single-purpose asset." As her training neared completion, Sarah participated in a major exercise designed to test everything she had learned. The scenario involved a hostage rescue operation in a complex environment that required both maritime and land-based skills. Her role was to provide overwatch and precision fire support for a team conducting the actual rescue. The exercise began with a nighttime insertion by small boat in rough seas. Sarah had to maintain her equipment's readiness while dealing with seasickness and saltwater exposure. Once on shore, she had to navigate to an overwatch position nearly a mile inland while carrying her full kit and remaining undetected by opposing force observers. The shooting challenges were among the most demanding she had ever faced. Multiple targets appeared and disappeared quickly, requiring immediate identification and engagement. Some targets were hostages who had to be protected, while others were threats that needed to be eliminated. The margin for error was essentially zero. Sarah's performance during the exercise was flawless. She successfully identified and engaged 7 different targets over the course of 40 minutes, with each shot meeting the precise requirements of the scenario. Her ability to distinguish between threats and innocence under extreme time pressure impressed even the most experienced observers. Following the exercise, she received feedback from the SEAL team leaders who had participated. Their assessment was unanimously positive, with several noting that her support had made their mission significantly easier and safer. Chief Kowalski, who had led the rescue team, was particularly complimentary. "Having Ghost on Overwatch completely changed our tactical options," he explained to the evaluation board. "We could move with confidence knowing that any threats would be eliminated before they could engage us. That kind of support is invaluable in real-world operations." The formal graduation ceremony was attended by senior officers from multiple commands. Sarah's successful completion of the training program represented a significant milestone, not just for her personally, but for the military's ongoing evolution toward full integration of women in combat roles.
Admiral Watson, the senior naval special warfare officer present, addressed her directly during the ceremony.
Lieutenant Matthews, your performance throughout this training has been exemplary. You have earned the respect of some of the most elite warriors in our military. More importantly, you have demonstrated that excellence knows no boundaries.
Sarah's response was characteristically modest.
Thank you, sir. I'm honored to have had this opportunity and look forward to contributing to future missions. As she prepared to return to her home unit, Sarah reflected on the experience. She had proven herself capable of operating at the highest levels of military proficiency while maintaining her personal values and professional standards. The challenges she had faced and overcome would serve her well in whatever assignments lay ahead. The relationships she had built with the SEAL community would prove valuable in unexpected ways. Several of the men she had trained with specifically requested her support for upcoming operations, recognizing that her unique combination of skills and experience made her an ideal force multiplier for their missions. But, perhaps most importantly, Sarah had demonstrated to herself that she could succeed in any environment where performance mattered more than politics. The confidence she gained from this experience would soon be tested in ways she could never have anticipated, as her growing reputation attracted the attention of those who viewed her success as a challenge to be met. The assignment came through secure channels on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. Sarah was reviewing intelligence reports in her temporary office at the Joint Operations Center when her encrypted phone buzzed with a priority message. The text was brief and direct: report to Building 7, Room 203, 1,400 hours.
Come prepared for extended deployment.
Building 7 housed some of the military's most sensitive planning operations, and Room 203 was known among special operations personnel as the place where the most dangerous missions were conceived and executed. As Sarah walked through the corridors lined with photographs of fallen heroes, she wondered what challenge awaited her this time. The briefing room contained a mixture of faces she recognized and others she didn't. Several SEAL team leaders she had worked with during training were present, along with intelligence officers and senior command staff. The atmosphere was tense with the kind of focused energy that preceded major operations. Commander Jackson, whom she had met briefly during her SEAL training, stood at the front of the room reviewing satellite imagery projected on multiple screens. When everyone was seated, he began the briefing with characteristic directness. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a situation developing in the Horn of Africa that requires immediate attention. A terrorist cell has taken control of a remote compound near the Somali coast, and intelligence indicates they're planning a significant attack against American interests in the region. The images on the screen showed a fortified compound built into rocky terrain overlooking the ocean. Multiple buildings were visible within high walls, along with several guard towers and what appeared to be defensive positions. The location was isolated, accessible only by a single road winding through mountainous terrain. The compound is heavily defended, Commander Jackson continued, and conventional assault would result in unacceptable casualties. We need a precision approach that eliminates key targets while allowing our assault teams to complete their missions safely. As the briefing progressed, it became clear why Sarah had been called. The mission required eliminating specific high-value targets from extreme range while providing overwatch for multiple SEAL teams conducting simultaneous operations. The shooting challenges would be among the most demanding ever attempted in a combat environment. Chief Warrant Officer Reynolds, the mission's tactical coordinator, outlined the specific requirements. Ghost, you'll be positioned on a ridge approximately 1,400 meters from the primary target building. From that position, you'll have clear lines of sight to all critical areas of the compound. Your targets include 3 confirmed terrorist leaders and any sentries who threaten the assault teams. The distance was at the very edge of what most snipers considered possible, and environmental factors would make the shots even more challenging. Coastal winds were unpredictable, temperature variations could affect bullet trajectory, and the targets would likely be moving when engagement became necessary. Sarah studied the terrain maps and satellite imagery carefully, asking detailed questions about wind patterns, target behavior, and timeline requirements. Her methodical approach to mission planning had become her trademark, and the planning team appreciated her thoroughness. "What's the insertion method?" she asked, noting the compound's isolation. Fast rope from helicopter during pre-dawn hours, replied Lieutenant Commander Brooks, the mission leader. You'll have approximately 6 hours to reach your firing position and prepare for the assault. 6 hours was tight for covering the rough terrain between the landing zone and the designated overwatch position, especially while carrying the heavy equipment needed for long-range precision shooting. Sarah made mental notes about what gear would be essential and what could be left behind to save weight. The weather briefing added another layer of complexity. Coastal fog was common in the area during early morning hours, potentially affecting visibility at crucial moments. Wind patterns were difficult to predict, varying significantly with altitude and time of day. These factors would require constant adjustment and split-second decision-making during the operation. Over the next 3 days, Sarah immersed herself in preparation. She studied every available piece of intelligence about the target area, memorizing the compound's layout until she could navigate it in her mind with perfect accuracy. She practiced shooting under conditions designed to simulate the environmental challenges she would face. The training scenarios were designed by Chief Martinez, her former instructor, who understood exactly what the mission would demand. He created exercises involving shots at extreme range under varying wind conditions, often while Sarah was exhausted from physical exertion that simulated the approach to her firing position. Remember, Martinez advised during one training session, at that distance, everything matters. Temperature, humidity, wind direction, even your own breathing will affect the shot. You'll have to read conditions constantly and adjust accordingly. Sarah spent hours with the meteorology team, learning to interpret weather data and predict how atmospheric conditions would affect bullet trajectory at different times of day. She studied wind patterns specific to coastal mountain regions, understanding how terrain features could create unpredictable air currents. The equipment selection required careful consideration. Her standard rifle would need modifications to perform reliably at the extended range required by the mission. The ballistics team worked with her to select ammunition specifically designed for extreme distance shooting, testing different loads to find the optimal combination for the expected conditions. Sergeant First Class Kim, the team's equipment specialist, helped her configure the rifle for maximum accuracy. At 1,400 meters, we're talking about a flight time of nearly 2 seconds, he explained while adjusting the scope's elevation settings. By the time your bullet reaches the target, everything will have changed. The scope itself was a precision instrument capable of magnification levels that turned distant figures into clearly defined targets. Sarah spent hours learning to use its advanced features, including range-finding capabilities and ballistic calculators that could help compensate for environmental factors. Physical conditioning intensified as the mission date approached. Sarah had to be capable of carrying her equipment over rough terrain while maintaining the stamina needed for hours of precise shooting. The approach to her firing position would cover nearly 5 miles of mountainous ground, much of it requiring careful movement to avoid detection. Master Chief Thompson, a veteran SEAL who would be leading one of the assault teams, expressed concerns about the mission's complexity during a planning session. "We're asking a lot of one person," he observed. "If Ghost can't eliminate those sentries when we need her to, we're going to have a very bad day." Commander Jackson nodded, understanding the legitimate concern. "That's why we're going with the best marksman available. Ghost's track record speaks for itself, and she's proven capable of performing under pressure." Sarah appreciated the confidence but understood the weight of responsibility. The lives of multiple SEAL team members would depend on her ability to eliminate threats at precisely the right moments. Any failure on her part could result in casualties among some of the military's most elite personnel. The final briefing took place 18 hours before departure. Every aspect of the mission had been planned and rehearsed multiple times, but combat operations always contained unpredictable elements that could change everything in an instant. Sarah listened carefully as each team leader reviewed their responsibilities and contingency plans. "Weather update shows possible fog during the early morning hours," reported the meteorology officer. "Visibility could drop to less than 100 meters in some areas, which might delay the assault timeline." This was exactly the kind of complication that made special operations missions so challenging. All the planning in the world couldn't account for every possible scenario, requiring personnel who could adapt quickly to changing circumstances while maintaining mission focus. Sarah spent her final evening writing letters to her family, a tradition she had maintained before every deployment. Her grandfather, now in his 80s, still asked about her military service during their weekly phone calls. She never told him the specifics of her missions, but he seemed to understand that she was carrying forward the traditions he had taught her as a child. The helicopter flight to the insertion point took place in complete darkness, with the aircraft flying at minimal altitude to avoid detection. Sarah reviewed her mission checklist one final time, ensuring that every piece of equipment was properly secured and that she understood her role in the complex operation that was about to unfold. As the aircraft approached the drop zone, she could see the dark outline of mountains against the star-filled sky. Somewhere in that rugged terrain lay the compound where dangerous men were planning attacks against innocent people. Her job was to ensure they never had the chance to carry out their plans. The fast rope insertion went smoothly, with Sarah and her equipment reaching the ground safely despite the challenging terrain. As the helicopter disappeared into the darkness, she was alone in hostile territory with hours of difficult movement ahead. The weight of her equipment was significant, but her conditioning prepared her for the physical demands of the approach. Navigation in the darkness required careful attention to terrain features and compass bearings. Sarah moved methodically through the mountains, stopping frequently to check her position and listen for any signs of enemy activity. The compound was still miles away, but she knew that security patrols might be operating anywhere in the area. The approach took exactly 5 hours and 40 minutes, bringing her to the designated overwatch position just as the eastern horizon began to show the first hints of dawn. The location provided an excellent view of the target compound, though the distance was even more daunting when seen with the naked eye. Sarah immediately began preparing her firing position, using natural terrain features to create a concealed location from which she could engage targets while remaining invisible to enemy observers. The process required careful attention to detail, as any mistake could compromise not only her own safety but the entire mission. As she assembled her rifle and began ranging targets within the compound, she could see figures moving between buildings in what appeared to be normal security routines. These were the men she would need to eliminate when the assault began, and their lives were now measured in hours. The radio check with the assault teams confirmed that everyone was in position and ready to execute the mission. Sarah reported her status as prepared, understanding that the next few hours would test everything she had learned about precision shooting under extreme conditions. Through her scope, the compound that had seemed impossibly distant became a detailed tactical environment. She could see individual sentries, identify their weapons and movements, and begin calculating the precise shots that would soon be required. The waiting period before action was always the most challenging part of any mission, requiring absolute focus while managing the natural tendency toward nervousness. As the sun climbed higher, environmental conditions began to change in ways that would affect her shooting. Temperature increases would alter bullet trajectory, and wind patterns were already showing the variability that meteorology had predicted. Sarah made careful notes about these changes, preparing for the moment when theoretical planning would become life-and-death reality. The assault began at 0630 hours local time, just as the morning sun started burning off the coastal fog that had provided additional cover for the SEAL team's approach. Sarah watched through her scope as black-clad figures moved like shadows toward their assigned breach points, each team member a professional warrior trained for exactly this type of operation. "Ghost, this is Alpha Leader," came the voice through her earpiece. "We're beginning our approach. Stand by for target engagement." Sarah's crosshairs were already tracking the first sentry, a bearded man in military fatigues who was walking along the compound's eastern wall. At 1,400 meters, he appeared small in her scope, but her calculations were precise. Wind was minimal, temperature was within acceptable parameters, and her rifle was perfectly zeroed. "Target acquired," she whispered into her radio. "Standing by." The sentry paused at the corner of the wall, looking out toward the ocean where he might have spotted movement if the SEALs had been less skilled at concealment. This was the moment Sarah had been waiting for, when the target was stationary and presented the clearest shot profile. Her breathing slowed to the rhythm she had practiced thousands of times. The rifle felt like an extension of her body, every component perfectly aligned for maximum accuracy. Through her scope, she could see the target clearly, unaware that death was approaching at over 2,000 feet per second.
Sarah's finger applied steady pressure to the trigger with the same gentle control her grandfather had taught her decades ago while hunting deer in Montana woods. The rifle fired with a suppressed crack that echoed briefly across the mountainous terrain. The bullet's flight time at that distance was nearly 2 seconds, an eternity in combat situations where everything could change in an instant. Sarah watched through her scope as the projectile found its mark with devastating precision. The sentry collapsed immediately, eliminated so quietly that other defenders remained unaware of what had happened. "Target down," she reported calmly. "Alpha, you're clear on the eastern approach." Before the SEAL teams could acknowledge, Sarah was already tracking her second target, a machine gunner positioned in a guard tower that overlooked the main breach point. This shot was more challenging because of the elevation angle and the fact that the target was partially concealed behind ballistic protection. The gunner was alert, scanning the approaches where he might detect incoming assault teams. Sarah calculated wind drift and bullet drop for the elevated target, making minute adjustments to her scope settings. This target had to be eliminated before he could engage the SEALs with automatic weapon fire. Her second shot was even more precise than the first, finding the small gap in the gunner's protective position and eliminating him instantly. The heavy machine gun that could have devastated the assault teams was silenced before it could fire a single round. "Tower gunner neutralized," Sarah reported. "Bravo team, you have a clear approach." The third target presented the greatest challenge yet. Intelligence had identified a terrorist leader who needed to be eliminated, but he was located inside the main building where Sarah had only intermittent visibility. She would need to wait for him to appear in one of the windows or doorways, then take an immediate shot before he could disappear again. Through her scope, Sarah could see movement inside the building as the assault team's approach triggered increased activity among the defenders. Figures moved quickly between rooms, some carrying weapons while others appeared to be destroying documents or equipment. Then, she saw him. The target appeared in a second-floor window, looking out toward the compound's perimeter where explosions and gunfire indicated the assault was now underway. Sarah had perhaps 3 seconds to take the shot before he would move away from the window. This shot required perfect execution under extreme time pressure. Sarah's training took over, her body moving through practiced motions while her mind calculated the precise aim point needed to compensate for distance and angle. The target was partially concealed behind window frame, leaving only a small portion of his silhouette visible. The shot was perfect. Through her scope, Sarah watched as the terrorist leader was eliminated instantly, removing a dangerous enemy who had been planning attacks against American targets. His death would save countless innocent lives while demonstrating the precision capabilities of American Special Operations Forces. "High-value target eliminated," Sarah reported. "Building is clear for assault team entry." The radio crackled with acknowledgments from multiple team leaders as the assault teams pressed their advantage. With the key defensive positions eliminated, the SEALs could advance more aggressively while maintaining acceptable risk levels. Sarah's precise shooting had fundamentally changed the tactical situation in favor of friendly forces. But the mission wasn't complete. Intelligence indicated that additional high-value targets were present in the compound, and Sarah needed to provide continuing overwatch as the assault teams cleared each building systematically. Her role had evolved from eliminating specific threats to providing general fire support as opportunities presented themselves. Over the next 20 minutes, Sarah engaged 4 additional targets, each shot carefully planned and executed to support the advancing SEAL teams. Her accuracy remained perfect despite the challenging conditions and the pressure of supporting multiple teams simultaneously. "Ghost, this is Command," came a new voice on the radio. "Outstanding work. The assault teams are reporting complete mission success with 0 friendly casualties. Your fire support was instrumental in that achievement." Sarah acknowledged the praise while continuing to scan for potential threats. The compound appeared to be fully under friendly control, but combat situations could change rapidly, and her vigilance needed to continue until all teams were safely extracted. The extraction went smoothly, with helicopter support arriving on schedule to recover both the assault teams and their intelligence haul. Sarah's own extraction required a careful withdrawal from her overwatch position, ensuring she left no trace of her presence that enemy forces could use for intelligence purposes.
During the flight back to base, Chief Thompson, the SEAL team leader, made his way to where Sarah was sitting. "Ghost, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've never seen shooting like that. You made an impossible mission look routine."
Sarah's response was characteristically modest. "Just glad everyone made it home safe, Chief. That's what matters."
The post-mission debrief took place 12 hours later, after all personnel had been able to rest and decompress from the operation's intensity. Sarah's performance was analyzed in detail, with ballistics experts expressing amazement at her accuracy under such challenging conditions. 5 targets eliminated from 1,400 meters with perfect accuracy, reported Major Collins, the operations analyst. Each shot was tactically perfect, eliminating threats at exactly the right moment to support the assault team's movements. The mission's success had implications beyond its immediate tactical objectives. It demonstrated the value of precision marksmanship in special operations environments, validating the military's investment in advanced sniper training and equipment.
Sarah's performance would influence future tactical doctrine and mission planning procedures.
More immediately, her reputation within the special operations community reached new heights. Word of her achievement spread rapidly through classified channels, bringing attention from senior commanders who were always seeking force multipliers for the most challenging missions. Within a week of returning from the Horn of Africa, Sarah received notification that she was being considered for additional specialized training and assignment to a joint task force focused on the most sensitive counter-terrorism operations. The opportunity represented both recognition of her abilities and increased responsibility for protecting American interests globally. But first, she was granted 2 weeks of leave, allowing her to return home to Montana for the first time in over a year. The familiar landscape of her childhood provided a stark contrast to the operational environments where she had been serving, offering perspective on how far she had traveled both literally and professionally. Her grandfather was waiting on the front porch when her taxi arrived at the family farm. At 83, he moved more slowly than she remembered, but his eyes still held the keen intelligence that had made him such an effective teacher during her childhood. "Welcome home, granddaughter," he said simply, embracing her with the quiet strength that had always been his trademark. They spent the evening on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in brilliant colors while Sarah shared carefully edited stories of her military service. Her grandfather listened without asking for details she couldn't provide, understanding that some experiences belonged to the warrior who lived them. "Your grandmother would have been proud," he said as darkness settled over the valley. "She always said you had the heart of a protector." Sarah found peace in the familiar routines of farm life, helping with daily chores that connected her to the values and work ethic that had shaped her character. The skills her grandfather had taught her about patience, precision, and respect for life had proven invaluable in environments he could never have imagined. On her last evening home, they walked together to the meadow where she had learned to shoot as a child. The old targets were still in place, weathered by years of mountain storms but still functional for practice. Sarah's grandfather handed her the same rifle she had used as a girl, watching as she prepared for a shot at a target 100 meters away. The rifle felt small and light after the precision instruments she had been using, but the fundamental principles remained the same. Sarah's shot was perfect, finding the exact center of the target with the same accuracy that had made her famous in military circles. "Some things never change," her grandfather observed with satisfaction. "Good shooting is good shooting, whether you're hunting deer or protecting your country." When Sarah returned to duty, she found that her reputation had preceded her in unexpected ways. Senior officers who had only heard stories about her capabilities were eager to meet the woman who had become a legend within the special operations community. The attention was both flattering and somewhat uncomfortable for someone who preferred to let her actions speak for themselves. The new assignment brought her into contact with personnel from multiple branches of the military, all working together on missions that required the highest levels of skill and discretion. Sarah's role was to provide precision fire support for operations that conventional forces couldn't handle, often in environments where political sensitivity required surgical precision. Her first briefing with the Joint Task Force included officers she recognized from various elite units, along with intelligence specialists and support personnel who enabled special operations success. The mission objectives were complex, involving multiple target sets and coordination with foreign military units.
Colonel Martinez, the task force commander, outlined Sarah's role with characteristic directness.
Ghost, you're here because you've proven capable of impossible shots under extreme conditions.
We have missions coming up that will test those abilities to their limits.
Sarah listened carefully as the colonel described operations planned for locations around the world, each presenting unique challenges that would require adapting her skills to new environments and tactical situations.
The scope of responsibility was larger than anything she had previously undertaken.
Sir, she responded when asked for her assessment, I understand the requirements.
I'm ready to contribute to whatever missions you deem appropriate.
The training for her new role was intensive, involving scenarios that pushed the boundaries of what special operations forces typically attempted. Sarah found herself working with equipment and techniques that represented the cutting edge of military technology, often testing systems before they were fully deployed to operational units. But, perhaps the most significant change was the level of autonomy she was given in planning and executing her portions of missions. Senior commanders had sufficient confidence in her judgment to allow her considerable freedom in determining how best to accomplish assigned objectives.
This trust was both empowering and sobering.
Sarah understood that her decisions could have strategic implications beyond the immediate tactical situation, affecting relationships with allied nations and influencing the success of complex political objectives. As she prepared for her first mission with the Joint Task Force, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. From a farm girl in Montana to one of the military's most capable special operations personnel, she had proven that determination and skill mattered more than background or gender. The challenges ahead would test everything she had learned and push her abilities in new directions. But Sarah approached them with the same quiet confidence that had characterized her entire military career, knowing that she was prepared to serve her country in whatever way was needed.